Hey, what's up everybody? It's TR with Earth Angel Mushrooms. Figured I'd make another video, and basically this video is going to be my walkthrough at work. So the things that I'm looking for. I've heard a saying that mushroom cultivation is the marriage between art and science. That is exactly true. So the science part, like I said in my other video, mushroom growing is easy. You can learn the science part. The extremely hard part is the art. So some people are gifted naturally and are very artistic when it comes to mushrooms and mushroom cultivation. So when I say that mushroom cultivation can be art, I'm saying that some people have an uncanny knack to be able to see what's going on. They're listening to the mushrooms, not literally, but they're looking and they're picking up on cues on how they're growing, what they're doing, what is happening in the bags, or what's happening in the grow room. And then you marry those two together. So I'm going to go over basically a little bit of the artistic part, or what I feel is the artistic part. So first, I'm going to say the science part. We know the three factors. What are the three factors? Temperature, humidity, CO2. Temperature, humidity, CO2. So you learn that. I mean, that's mushroom cultivation 101. Temperature, humidity, CO2. So if you have those in check, a lot of things work out. And then we could talk for hours and hours and hours about what happens when those are not in check. So anyway, I wanted to go over basically some of the artistic part and why I look at things the way I do when I'm doing my walk around, so to speak. And I walk around my op several times a day. I love this room. There is nothing more peaceful to me than walking through my colonization room. Well, I kind of like the grow room too, but for me, I like to walk through the colonization room and see things grow and the transition of different phases of growth. You know, shiitakes going from colonization to popcorning to browning, and watching it all unfold. But so I'll get back on track here. So whenever I come into the room, I'm looking for, well, one, you immediately can feel the temperature and you can kind of tell the CO2. I don't check the CO2 in here. I did before, just for a couple months. It typically stays 4,000 or 5,000 parts per million CO2 in this room. So I'm looking at the temperature. You know, I got the thermostat, make sure all that stuff's in check. One huge factor that changed the way I grew mushrooms, or drastically helped me out, was when I transitioned from doing just a few bags to doing 100 bags at a time. So for those of you who are growing just a few bags at a time, you're not getting a great view of what's going down. You can't really see and look at things as a whole. And when I say that, you can't see fluctuations in different, different spawn that you're using, or if the airflow is different, or the airflow is not where it should be, or the CO2 is too high. Like in the grow room, if the CO2 is too high, things happen, or the humidity is too low. And you don't really get that concept until you start growing at a larger scale, and you can start seeing a group of 50 bags at a time doing something. So for those of you on the brink of doing a lot more bags or a lot more blocks, or however you're growing, regardless of how you're growing, it doesn't matter. But if you can step to that next level, do it. Because you're going to gain a vast amount of information just by doing that. So I got to the point where I could barely break even on shiitakes, And I instantly went from doing, I don't know, 10 bags or whatever a week. This is when I just started selling, to 100 bags a week. And that step alone drastically changed the trajectory of my knowledge base. So it just took off because I got to see all kinds of different things. When you can look at 100 bags at a time, you can see how things are going down, how the light affects their browning, or the light affects stuff, how airflow, which shiitakes and airflow go hand in hand. You don't want them to touch. You want airflow all the way around the bag. If you don't, then they don't brown the same as the other bags. And you don't see that whenever you're doing 5 blocks at a time. So when I come in this room, the very first things that I do are, check the air temperature. And the humidity is not a big deal in this room because we have bags. But when I come down a row, I look at the row as a whole before I start looking at specific bags. And I always have my bags lined up so I can look through the row. And one, I have to have them that way anyway for airflow, but also you want them like that so you can look in between them and see all the blocks. So before I look at specific blocks, I look at groups of blocks. So you can see that, so I do about almost, I think it's 600 bags a week of shiitake. And you can see the different phases they're in. And then over here, these are all oyster bags that we just inoculated today. So I look at them as a whole. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for differences in the bags. So let's say, because I'm using multiple bags of spawn for all of these blocks. And before you ever see contamination will reveal itself in one huge factor. This is the artistic part of this, is whenever you see a group of bags that have excessive condensation or relatively more condensation, they might look just like this. So they're completely uncolonized, just like all the other bags, but you see a group of bags that have more condensation. So it's just relative to the other bags. They're always going to have condensation. You can never get away from condensation. All of these bags have condensation. A lot of new guys starting off are like, well, I have a ton of water on the inside of my bag. Yeah, you have a ton of water on the inside of your bag because of physics or science or something. It's that the substrate is hotter. You cannot get away from that. Substrate is hot. On the outside is cooler relatively, so you have condensation. You cannot get away from condensation. So when I say I'm looking for condensation, I'm looking for higher levels of condensation relative to the other bags. So you will see contamination before the actual contamination reveals itself. So you might have trichoderma or penicillium or whatever it happens to be. You'll see them all the longer you do this. So you're looking for that. You're looking for growth. So as a whole, do you see the spawn blasting off? And you want to keep track of stuff like how long does it take the spawn to blast off week after week after week. And that can be a sign that if you see a group of bags that all of a sudden it takes 3 days for the spawn to blast off, as opposed to the next day or 2 days. So that can be a big sign that something is going wrong in that bag, or something is going wrong with the spawn that you used. I'm a big fan of using fresh spawn. When I say fresh, I mean never refrigerated. I make my own spawn and I sell spawn also, but I try to use spawn that is, the second it's ready, it goes into the bag, so the production bag. You have hardly any lag time. The spawn blasts off instantly. So I'm looking at condensation. I'm looking at growth. I'm looking at the spawn and how it's taking off. And I'm looking at them as a whole. I can't emphasize enough that you're not just looking at one bag, because one bag might contaminate. Oh well, throw it out. But you're looking at them as a whole. Some of the other things that I look for is if my employees stacked them right. because a lot of times I'll come in here. Here's a great example right here. Those bags are almost touching. Shiitakes don't like to touch. You don't want shiitakes to touch. And then for oyster bags, you don't want them close to each other because they generate so much heat. So they're generating more heat because there's more nutrients in the substrate. So you want to make sure that everything's good to go. So let's just take a walk around the colonization room, and then you're going to check based on species. You want to make sure there's ample airflow. So not only do I have my AC and furnace fan going, but I also, on my oyster side of the room, which is over there, since they're generating more heat because of more nutrients and they're faster colonizers, I have a fan. So I have a big fan. In this room, I have had to air condition it all winter long. Even when it was -5 degrees outside, I was still using the air conditioner because they're generating a lot of heat. So here's some bags that we inoculated the other day. So let's see the date on these. They are 2/19 and they're doing pretty doggone good. So they are on track. Another thing is you want to compare it to the other strains. If you happen to be growing multiple strains, you want to keep everything in check, and everything's relative to the other bags, to the other strains, the other species, whatever. Everything has its own parameters. But like I said in the beginning of the video, look at things as a whole, not just one bag at a time. And the second you can grow more bags, you do more bags, because you're going to get a better picture of the things that are going on whenever you do that. So hopefully this video gave you some insight, maybe on what you're looking for in your colonization room, why I think that if you are on the brink and can't decide whether you should add more bags, I'm a huge supporter of growing more, especially when you're starting off. If you can afford it, grow those more bags. You will never regret it. You can always go backwards and do less, but the knowledge that you're going to gain from just adding those extra bags is going to pay off. It's going to pay huge dividends in your knowledge base. So anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. Subscribe to my channel, and we will talk to you later.